When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful.
Pause. Without embarrassment. Why would he say that? He doesn't need to say that. Tucker Carlson released his first statement. Now, there's some insight here that I think, unfortunately, it's hard to disseminate sometimes as from our standpoint, and it's hard for you to sort of differentiate, right, when you're reading stories out there and get the truth. Was he fired? Did he quit? What's happening behind the scenes? In watching his statement, and full disclosure, I've spent some time with Tucker, not a lot of time with Tucker. They've always been pretty pleasant interactions, cordial, right? It's not like we were ever friends or anything, but we were both at Fox News at the same time before he had a show. We were contributors. So I want you to know that in case you think that I'm biased, probably because I think he's generally a nice guy from what I've encountered and what I've heard. Okay, so just to be clear, I think we've gotten that out of the way.
It's covered.
There you go. Yes. Disclaimer. In watching his statement, I really understand what it is that he's trying to say. He's limited from things that he can say. He has a lawsuit, right? So when that happens, your lawyers say, you cannot say anything. So Tucker is right now in a position. We don't know everything. What we do know is he would not be able to clear his name if that were the case. If everything that you read out there is a lie, there's nothing he can say about it until it goes through the proper legal channels. And depending on how he left Fox News, whether they fired him or he left, he can't actually clarify that to you either because of the terms of employment. Now, this is standard practice across the board. Sometimes it's worse than others. So in watching Tucker Carlson's statement, let's just watch it, pause and play it, and kind of read between the lines. I think there's a lot here.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people, people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also. A lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population.
So pause really quickly. Here's what he's saying there. He's had to work amongst elites for a very long time in this industry. And what he's trying to say is they are disconnected from you. This is why you've heard us say here, you watching, listening, you are what matters. A lot of sponsors out there, a lot of networks out there, right? You are a means to an end, dollars. And there are a lot of hosts, and by the way, a lot of producers, a lot of people who work at these companies who don't feel that way. You are what matter. What he is saying there is that he cares and is grateful for you, and in kind of a passive way saying, not these assholes. Let's keep playing.
So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated.
Pause. What do you think that means? Do you think that suggests that Tucker liked doing the sort of clickbait debates?
No.
That means that sometimes when you work for a big company, there are orders that come from the top down. And by the way,
ratings.
This is the same place, just to be clear, this is the same place, Fox News, when I was there, that said, absolutely not, change my mind would never work. Even
really?
And it was before Fox Nation where I said they had Studio B. I said, well, let's just do it online and see what happens. Like, no, it's got to be in a quadrant view. It's got to be snappy. You each have to have just a minute and get your points in. I said, okay, well, look, this is what I would like to do. No way, it would never be permissible, not just at Fox News, but at other news outlets as well. And by the way, a lot of online outlets as well. That is him saying, I have done this, and it's silly. It's useless. It's almost a professional wrestler breaking kayfabe. What? Kayfabe. K-fob?
Is that to satisfy your demographic, though? Because there is a certain demographic that watches Fox. So if you grade against what they want to see...
They have time constraints with sponsors, right? They have time constraints, and so they don't want to have a conversation. They want to have a beginning, middle, and end before every single spot that breaks to commercial, and that doesn't lend itself to long-form conversations.
No.
There's a huge difference between having conversations, like Tucker said, with average, everyday Americans, both right and left, and people who are paid to go on, score points, and then raise money for their nonprofit.
It's a show.
Yeah, no, and his most effective part of his show was his monologue. That was it. After the monologue, I really didn't want to listen to anything else because I'm like, I want to hear a long form, maybe 5-10 minutes long, of a comment or something that he's talking about, because the rest of it I know is going to be that format.
And by the way, his monologues really were different from a lot of it. Look, whether you like him or not, he was taking risks with those, and that was where he had 15 minutes unfettered. I bet you that's what he really loved to do. Because if you look at his response here, he never even alludes to being unsatisfied with that. He's letting you know the things, this is just, again, my speculation, but having been through this industry and been through similar circumstances, he's letting you know the things that might have been outside of his control that he wasn't a huge fan of, in which he had to take part. And in not mentioning the things that he was dissatisfied with, you can kind of glean, oh, I think this is what he's about and what he liked. Let's continue.
At the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources.
Pause.
When was
Come on, you know what that science, he's talking about COVID. Of course, everyone in the media, we know we were suspended, right? If we were suspended because we're independent at Fox News, there was pressure coming from the government to make sure that he did not discuss new sciences. Civil liberties, that also would tie back to COVID. When he talks about issues of our time, January 6th, we all know the kind of flack that he got, and he thought it was important to correct that record. I understand it. I know the kind of heat that they probably were bringing down on him, and God bless him for doing it anyway. I can only tell you how many times when I was there for 4.5 years, just as a contributor, being called into the second floor, like, you can't talk about that. Why? Because it's just too much.
It's truth.
It's just too much.
Too much truth.
People can't handle that.
So I think this is very illuminating, and you guys can jump in where you want. But I think there are a couple of more points here that, if you read between the lines, are pretty telling.
last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state.
Pause.
That's a depressing
It's very clear. Both sides collude. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to what you've heard me talk. Look, if let's say there's only two companies in town, and one is supposed to be black hat, one's supposed to be white hat, and they both have a conversation and say, look, these are the issues that we have with Tucker, so if you want him, we're going to do this with him. It's illegal in sports, by the way, to let another team know, or at least in certain sports, what you're offering them, what the contract is like, what the terms are on the way out. This happens in our industry all the time. Tucker just told you, he just reiterated something that we talked about in December.
Yeah.
There are people who are more powerful than you, and they're very concerned if they think that Tucker is more powerful than Fox News in and of itself, and that's something that they have to eliminate as a threat. He did not just say CNN. CNN's not a threat. Read between the lines. CNN is not a threat.
Right.
MSNBC is not a threat. He cannot say Fox News. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm telling you what it seems he's trying to say that I know he's precluded from saying. He made sure to say both sides, powerful corporate entities, collude to eliminate these conversations. That is very, very specific, and that's not by accident. Let's keep going.
Realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful.
Pause. Without embarrassment. Why would he say that? He doesn't need to say that. That'll bring us to the shakedown elements later. This is something that's very common, right? There's going to be discovery with this lawsuit. Every single text he's ever sent, every single message that he's ever sent.
With no context.
With no context.
When you read a text, you can't tell if it's a joke. It sounds serious every time. And they'll read into that, and they'll read it that way.
And this is what happens a lot with people in positions of a high profile, like Tucker Carlson. They're going, hey, I bet you don't want everyone to read every single joke or text you've ever said, even though I've never met you and you've never done anything wrong. This is something that's going to go into public discovery. He did not need to say that when honest people speak the truth, calmly and without embarrassment, one of these things is not like the other. He is letting you know. And he could tell me that everything I'm saying is wrong and I'm doing him a gross disservice, in which case I apologize. I'm trying to help out what I think is being said here, and we'll get into the lawsuit without embarrassment. That's key, and hopefully Tucker Carlson understands, and you guys can comment below that he, barring some kind of a crime, If there are some jokes out there, this is probably what's going to come down the pike. Nothing to be embarrassed about. Let's stop with the pearl clutching, acting like we all, in our own quiet time with friends, don't say things that out of context could be used against you. Every single one of you. Right now, would you want the entire world to see everything you've sent in the last 5 years to anybody you've ever talked to? That's what he's probably facing with these bogus lawsuits. And they're bogus.
My entire life on this show is lived out of context with the soundboard.
That's true.
So case in point. But no, I want to go back to a word that he said, and I was going to make this point a second ago, but he actually highlighted it when he said these orthodoxies can't last, so they won't. As somebody who, in Tucker's case, has worked at MSNBC, at CNN, and now at Fox News, I think he's referring to them.
He's referring to the legacy
networks.
media.
Yes, these legacy media outlets can't last. Look at the shakeup that you're seeing at CNN, the shakeup to some degree at MSNBC, now the shakeup at Fox. This is the death throes of an industry right now, is what you're seeing. And he's referring to it and saying, they're on the way out.
And he's one of the only people who is not on the way out.
Yeah.
And that should tell you something. Look, you don't get rid of your star player when they are at their peak. There's something going on here, and I understand Tucker probably looking out for the best interests of his family, of covering himself legally as there are ongoing suits. Has to be very, very careful, but that's a good point, Joe. Let's keep watching.
At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
There you go. There are some, and that's enough.
Yep.
He's alluding to. Now, I really, really hope that Tucker has a very good lawyer and is very careful, because sometimes you see people who go from legacy media online and they assume that online means free, the Wild West. It does not. And by the way, that's on absolutely both sides. So there are some places where you can speak freely. Rumble is one of them. It's not the only one, but it certainly is one of them, and the one making the most amount of progress. So it seems to me like Tucker is saying, I need to get to a point where I am free to speak what I actually believe. And just to be clear here, I want to, in defense of him, because you'll see this a lot, and I have had the luxury of not having anyone dictate what I say. That is a luxury for which I am supremely grateful.
Maybe have tried.
Yeah. You know what? I will say the things that I'm most grateful for in my life is that I get to come to work with you, Johnny Boy, my best friends for the better part of Johnny Boy, three decades, but 2 decades, and that win, lose, or draw, I get to say what it is that I mean. But I also see people maybe saying, well, then why did Tucker do this if he didn't believe this? Which we don't know what's been said. Again, there's a lot of speculation. It does not mean that someone is controlled opposition if they speak the truth, but they're not allowed. They're barred from speaking the whole truth they want to communicate. I'm willing to bet that that is a situation with Tucker. I do not believe that Tucker Carlson has ever said anything that he does not believe. I don't think that he would do that. But I do believe that there were instances where he was not allowed to communicate the entirety of the truth that he wanted to convey. That's very different. That's what happens a lot is, well, look, we're not going to tell you what to say, but if you say this, you might just... It's worse when you're a contributor, which he was for a long time. And if you say it this way, then we might just you might just not get your regular Wednesday spot.
Yeah,
that's what happens. It's the things that you're not permitted to say.
But information is becoming decorporatized. The marketplace wants you to not be beholden to a corporation. What would have made that video even more powerful?
Paper mache
is
hat.
If a paper mache hat, and if Don Lemon had walked by in just an apron, nothing but, and just said, "Amen."
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.